Welcome to the Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Hey, it's mock draft season. Let's get after it.
What's going on, Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman? Johnny Hekker, is that a banana punt in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
What? I'm Reggie Wilson, and let's redo last offseason. Let's just start over.
I'm Alec Lewis. Happy to be here and very much excited to watch the NCAA tournament and hopefully not have any Vikings news to cover for 2 days, maybe.
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
What's up? Welcome in. Viking Squad Show streaming on Locked On Vikings. Glad you're with us today. Carson Wentz is returning. That breaking in the last hour or so, spicing up what's been a boring free agency for the Vikings. Is that the right approach? Their biggest moves to this point have been obviously Kyler Murray, but Johnny Hekker, an offer sheet to a swing tackle from Buffalo, and we end the show with mock drafts for the first 2 days of the NFL draft. But I think that this qualifies as a breaking news item. Carson Wentz added to the QB room. Alec, I think you may have even forecast this weeks ago, saying the Vikings aren't opposed to adding another veteran, and sure enough, it's Carson Wentz. Presumably off of shoulder surgery. They've got another adult in the room. And now the debate begins. Is J.J. McCarthy trade bait? Is J.J. McCarthy QB3? What does this mean for McCarthy's future? We talked a lot about what would pique our interest in a trade package to offload J.J. McCarthy. And I think that conversation now comes to the forefront now that you've got Wentz backing up Murray, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying that this seemed pretty clear. The Vikings wanted to add another quarterback. Kevin O'Connell, days after the season, was like, we want to have the most talented and deep quarterback room as we possibly can. So this and all of the other moves go along with that want and that pursuit. Carson Wentz obviously had fans internally throughout last year. I think there was immense respect for him playing through what he played through over the 5-game starting stretch. And I do think there was an opportunity for him maybe in New York to play with the Jets, but he preferred this spot and this place. As far as what it means for J.J. McCarthy, I mean, look, the first thing I'll say is with Kyler Murray, the injury risk has to be talked about. So the guy has played 17 games once in the last 5 seasons. So you're going to need depth insurance there. In the event that the Vikings keep all 3 and J.J. McCarthy has to come in and play, there's injury risk to talk about there. And so I think so much of what the Vikings have done here is to prevent themselves from having to play a guy like Max Brosmer, who really is not ready to play at an NFL level. I mean, the J.J. trade stuff, I guess we can talk about more here. I just think until you get to a spot at which you see what he looks like coming out of this offseason, that is a huge data point to making a decision or making any evaluation on what to do for the future. So until you see that, and we won't see that for probably another month at least, it's hard for me to go down that road, which probably isn't fun for everybody.
Oh, I'm ready to go down it. Luke Inman, I'm picking up the phone. And now that you've equipped yourself with another veteran quarterback, if there's a time to try and capitalize on any value, it has to be now. And I've seen the point made that, well, all right, best case scenario now for J.J. McCarthy is that Kyler Murray and, not good for the organization, but for McCarthy specifically, if Murray gets hurt, then McCarthy has to prove more capable than Carson Wentz through practice. Who knows if he's even going to be practicing with the backups. He was not better than Carson Wentz in his time last year, and Carson Wentz wasn't that great either. It's just hard for me to see the path now for McCarthy to play, and if that's the case, then I think you probably are under some obligation to make that trade and try to get something now.
Boy, I'm already having visions of JJ McCarthy versus Carson Wentz battling for those 15-second team reps in practice. Iron sharpening iron. I think that's why that phrase was born for this JJ McCarthy versus Carson Wentz battle come training camp in August. But I think Alec nailed it, man. I still go back to that. Kyler Murray playing one healthy year in the last 5 seasons. And then think back to what the Vikings had to endure, what KOC had to endure, the GM, the Wilfs, everybody had to endure on this team last year with that nightmare quarterback carousel they went through. I think, despite all the moves that we're going to talk about today, I think doing everything they could to not reliving that quarterback carousel in 2026 was always going to be one of the top priorities of this offseason. So it makes sense to bring in a vet like Carson Wentz, been in the league, obviously knows your system, played decently, above average, competent quarterback play when healthy. And so whether they do move on from JJ McCarthy or not, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, I still think they're going to want to bring in another quarterback then. And that's why I don't think it makes a ton of sense unless you can get an offer that you think is just well above asking price or fair market value for JJ McCarthy coming off the year he had. But I think they want not 2, but 3 guys they feel comfortable with, whether that's JJ McCarthy or somebody else.
Yeah, Reggie, is it as simple as saying, well, if the team is serious about winning and Kyler Murray goes down, let's say they're 4-3, who are you going to put in? You're going to put in the volatility of JJ McCarthy or maybe the predictability of Carson Wentz. If they're 0-7, yeah, sure, give McCarthy some run. But if those are your 2 backup options, gun to head right now, what would you do if you're Kevin O'Connell?
I think you got to play McCarthy. I mean, you still need to see, if you're going to hold on to him, you still need to see what exactly you're going to have in this guy. And I think that's the tough part. My brother texted me this morning. He works for the Colts, so he has his own quarterback issues that he's seen up close and personal in that organization. And so he's like, hey, man, once the Wentz news dropped, he's like, Are they getting rid of JJ? And I was like, I don't see that. I think it's probably a little bit of an overcorrection from what they did last year. I think last year just went so terrible as far as signing Carson Wentz like right before the season started, getting Sam Howell and thinking that was going to be like some sort of a fix for the situation, and just riding with JJ, even though he missed a whole season with the knee injury and couldn't really do anything physically because he was rehabbing the knee to even get back upright in the first place. So I think that it wasn't a sound plan last year. They're kind of overcorrecting. And I think if you have to go with someone that is not Kyler, I feel like you have to just kind of see what you have in McCarthy, see what type of development that he had over the offseason and see what he could do. Because, again, this is a guy that you traded up a spot to take 10th overall. And it feels weird to just kind of give up on him after like a 1 season sample size. Granted, the injury history, and I think that's really what this is. You had JJ hurt last year, and then you bring in Carson Wentz, and then his freaking shoulder is about to fall off after a game, and you're just like, oh, great, wonderful. Who do we turn to now? Because JJ's not ready to come back. Oh, we're gonna turn to an undrafted free agent from the Gophers. Let's ride. Let's do this. And it wasn't a sound plan if they were hoping to win football games. And so I think they don't want to get in that situation again. The funny thing about it is you have McCarthy, Wentz, and Murray, all with injury history, all with significant injury history in their time playing in the NFL. So it's like you just never know. Like they all could stay healthy next year. They all could get hurt next year, or you can have some combination of 2 or 3 of them getting hurt at any given time this year. So I think it's just like, all right, let's try to insulate ourselves as much as possible if one of these guys go down.
Is this the end of Brosmer season? If McCarthy does stay Alec. Brosmer, are we talking about practice squad quarterback Max Brosmer, released quarterback Max Brosmer? Is this the end of the dream?
Yeah, I think practice squad. If it would be possible to keep him there, I think there is still, even after the performances, like there's still a level of. I mean, people internally really like Max. He's blended in really well with that locker room. So I would say if you could keep 3 and then get him to the practice squad, that'd be the preference. I will ask this because I wasn't here last week, Sam. You're talking about trading JJ in the package. Like, what package would you want or expect? Because I just be curious what you would feel would be correct there.
So there were 3 test cases that we sort of analyzed. So there's the high end and probably unrealistic end of the Josh Rosen package, which was a 2 and a 5. It's not going to be a Josh Rosen package. There was the Trey Lance package, which was a 4th, and he had injury issues of his own and 2 or 3 games on his resume for San Francisco. Also didn't have the stigma of some of the play, he didn't put on tape the bad stuff that JJ McCarthy put on tape. So honestly, what I went back to was Sam Howell's first deal when he got traded from Washington to Philadelphia. And that was like a 3rd and 4th pick swap and a 5th and 6th pick swap. It was like two pick swaps that elevated Washington's pick by 1 round. And I thought that was probably the low end. That was probably the basement deal. Maybe somewhere between Lance and Howell. Does that track with you?
And so, I mean, the question, yeah, I mean, that I think that's what you're not talking about, the Josh Rosen 2nd round, 5th round pick, considering considering what the league knows about the hurdle that it's been for JJ. Like, I think that will affect the value. My question to you then would be, like, you would be okay just doing 2 pick swaps rather than seeing if this guy comes out of this offseason taking a massive hurdle. Like, which would you prefer out of those 2 worlds? It seems like you'd prefer the pick swap world. And I guess I can understand either perspective, but I think that's part of the trading JJ conversation, is to think that you are going to acquire a day 1 or day 2 pick at this point it would be a faulty look at it. And so I think that's where, for me, it's interesting to assess people's expectations or their preferences when you kind of wade into that conversation.
Yeah. And again, I think I'm trying to get the best deal. I'm taking the calls and I'm exploring the market. And if suddenly I'm being offered a 4th, which is the Trey Lance deal, I'm probably considering it. If it's just a pick swap, I'm probably, hanging up the phone. But I'm just so curious about how this plays out in season if he's around here. And Reggie thinks that you would play JJ McCarthy. Luke, think about the guy we saw in McCarthy last year, the guy we saw in Carson Wentz. I think we saw such unpredictability from JJ McCarthy, where he could lose you a game, and in a couple cases, he could win you a game. And with Carson Wentz, probably lower ceiling, higher floor. Which one would you want to play if you're the head coach?
Yeah, I think, too, we go back to the rookie year. Losing that entire rookie season, I don't think, at least me personally, I was mentally prepared for just how behind the 8 ball he was going into last year. I assumed that, even taking the mental reps or being, in the quarterback room day after day would have done a little bit more for his development and progression. That simply just wasn't the case. Now, you still saw flashes. I mean, week 1, the 4th quarter comeback. It wasn't until he started to get really hobbled and hurt. And I think, again, that's where this kind of conversation keeps reverting back to, is that you've now got 3 quarterbacks with major injury concerns. But I think the talent is there. The talent was there to be a first-round quarterback. Maybe 10 was a little high looking back, but nonetheless, obviously the premium of the position, those guys are going to get pushed up a little bit. If you move on from this guy, let's say for a 4th-round pick, the Trey Lance deal, Now, all of a sudden, you need a quarterback 3, a developmental type of guy. Is there anybody in this draft class in that 4th round range that you like as a developmental quarterback more than what you have already in the building with J.J. McCarthy with 2 years under his belt? I don't think so. And I think KOC would agree. Obviously, we're not in those conversations inside the locker room, inside the coaches' meeting. But I think at the end of the day, I'm not even going to guess or speculate who would be the quarterback 2 right now. Maybe depends on where you're at in not only the season, but your record. Things like the weekly matchup even might come into play as well. But training camp's going to decide a lot of that stuff. Preseason, those practices, the things that we're not at, unfortunately, speak volumes to the coaches. And until we kind of go through that process, it's kind of just throwing a dart up there, Sam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You sign 2 cheap quarterbacks. You sign a CB3 and a punter and a handful of retentions in-house. It's been a pretty boring free agency for the Vikings, and there are needs that remain. Very different approach from 2025. Night and day. You had money restrictions. We'll get into the conservative nature of the Vikings' methodology with Rob Brzezinski and whether it's a wise move when we come back. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. It's a big day for college basketball. Going to be nonstop for the next 12 hours. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings, hopefully some buzzer beaters. It's going to be going late into the night, and there's always action on the board at FanDuel. And now you can turn your hunches into big potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Put together any parlay you want. Do your research, do your digging, look at all the numbers. Look at the RPI. Look at the quad 1 wins. I love quad 1 wins. And find the best player props. Put together the ultimate golden parlay ticket and then apply a profit boost. Instantly bump up the potential payout. So go bold, go safe, whichever method you want. Ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. If you're Alec and Reggie, probably going to have some Missouri love in that parlay. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. And make sure you're checking out Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings 30-minute daily dose, as well as Locked On Vikings After Dark with Luke Braun and Arif Hassan. So, Reggie, Vikings have had a boring free agency. I think we knew this would be the case to some extent. They've also invited some of it on themselves by designating Jonathan Allen post-June 1 cut. That holds some cap, right? Harrison Smith, post-June 1 cut, holds some cap. So a little bit of that is on the Vikings. I also think they've elected not to restructure a couple contracts that were restructurable. They've not offered extensions to players that could have opened up additional cap space. So there are some internal methods where the Vikings could have cleared more money, created more cap space, and been more aggressive. They have not done that. And I found it interesting that Kevin Seifert, in an article yesterday, said multiple sources said the Wilfs did not order a lower cash payroll this season, which we've suspected. So if that's true, and this is just the Brzezinski style to get right financially and reduce spending, is that the right approach? For now, it's a team that seems to not be rebuilding, nor would they be considered an elite contender at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I think, you're trying to kind of overcorrect for some of the decisions that were made last year where you spent a bunch of money and it didn't really get you the results that you were looking for. I think they're just trying to be a little bit smarter with how they're doing this. They needed a punter. So you go and sign one of the best punters of this generation. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then, you needed some pieces. And they still haven't gotten all of those pieces yet. I think, the draft is a big thing for them this year, which I think that's probably where they're going to turn a lot of their attentions to. When you look at the division and how those teams have been built, they've been very draft centric and very draft focused. And they lose players, they draft guys and those players turn out to be studs and they move on, and then they just replenish them. Brad in Detroit is one of the best at it. Poles is acquitting himself well as well. And then, Green Bay, that's pretty much all they do is build through the draft. And so I think this is the Vikings kind of resetting and trying to, build out, get younger, and try to have guys who are able to make a little bit more of an impact for a lower cost, because they went out and spent all this money last year and it didn't necessarily work out. And so, you try to get there, you try to get the money back down a little bit, you get cap compliant. I like what Kev said about them eating their vegetables this offseason. I think that's a great analogy.
I think one thing that maybe goes a little untalked about when we talk about these moves, and I'm kind of going back to last year's when, a general manager starts to feel that seat warm up a little bit, and they know they got to have a big offseason. They tend to start swinging on guys that normally maybe they wouldn't. And we saw that with Rick Spielman. Remember, felt like those last at least 2, maybe 3 years, he started kind of coloring outside the lines a little bit, so to speak, compared to what we were used to with Rick, previously to that point. And even though they were coming off that 14-win season, I got to think Kwesi knew he, maybe a little bit anyways, in the back of his head, that he hadn't kind of lived up to the billing when it came to drafting. And obviously, what happens when you miss badly in the draft year after year after year, all of a sudden now you're forced to go fill those huge needs in free agency, which in turn costs way more than paying somebody on a rookie deal. So looking back, I think those bad drafts, which we've talked about, but those bad drafts really kind of put Kwesi behind the 8 ball and put his kind of, roster management in a very unhealthy position, the way he spent all that money the past 2 years. And, some of those signings were home run signings too. Some of those signings made a huge impact. The Grenard, Cashman, a couple others, but it's just never going to be realistic to spend that type of money year after year after year. So they move on from Kwesi. And I'm sure, despite the reports, I'm sure one of the first conversations, maybe they didn't order it, but I'm going to guess it was a heavy suggestion to Rob Brzezinski from the Wilfs to just dial it back a little bit, try to restore some health back into this whole roster and salary cap again. And that's just kind of the ebb and flow in this league, trying to tweak your salary cap and your roster year after year. Sometimes, you go all in one offseason if you think you're in a championship window. And then some years you're just kind of building for the future. So Brzezinski comes in day one. He's got over $40 million in the hole. And I'm sure, by the way, that was a lot harder to clear than he made it look. He's one of the best in the biz for that reason alone. But even after all the restructures, all the pay cuts, cutting multiple starters, even after all that, he still hardly got any money to play with. And that ultimately, I think, is why they haven't spent a lot of money or made any splashes, because even after paying your starting quarterback, Kyler Murray, peanuts, right? Well, not even less than $2 million. You got JJ McCarthy, a top 10 pick on a rookie deal. They still don't have any cap space. That's just how bad things were. And, I think every good GM looks at these kind of 2-3 year windows. How do we compete this year, but set ourselves up to make a big push if we want to in the following years? And I think that's exactly what they've done with Kyler. You got the 1 year audition. And if he looks the part, if he balls out, they are in a great place to bring him back on a multi-year deal and still have some money to play with, as well as kind of retain their core like the Jordan Addisons as well.
Yeah, Alec, is that the play here? You're trying to open up another window in 2027 because they've lost 4 starters. Ryan Kelly, not replaced. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, not replaced. Probably losing Harrison Smith, not replaced. So holes have opened. They've not been filled. And there's rumors about trading Jonathan Grenard. And if you're Rob Brzezinski, we don't know his aspirations. We don't know how much he wants this full-time job. It's an interesting audition process, because if you really wanted to wheel and deal and say, look what I can do on a limited budget, I'm going to open up money here, here, and here, fill these holes, let's roll. He hasn't done that. And it's just a little hard to believe there wasn't some initiative or some verdict or instruction to say, we'd like to dial back on some of the spending. How do you read it?
Yeah, I mean, I could go a lot of different ways with it. And listening to you guys, it was interesting. I'd say the first thing with Harrison Smith completely up in the air. He could come back, so that I wouldn't rule that one out. That's what I would say with that. The other thing of Kwesi making moves last year, I would say this. Like, I think you got to be very careful with. Yes, the accountability falls on his desk, but the idea that he was unilaterally, signing guys who are older and coming off injured seasons and thinking that was the most optimal decision, I don't know if that jives with his thought process. So that wades into a little bit of the amount of cooks in the kitchen is what I would say. As far as Rob, I mean, I think like part of this process for him, like he wouldn't feel the need to have this splash free agency draft period to prove to anything or anybody. Like his Rob Brzezinski is not going to act to try to create public belief in him. Like that's just not the process that he's going to go through. It is going to be, can they build the roster optimally in the present and the future? And I think that's so much of what they've done here is like they've been interested in certain free agents, whether you want to talk about a David Onyemata, the defensive tackle who signed with the Jets, whether you want to talk about Jawan Jennings, who still hasn't signed, whether you want to talk about Travis Etienne, who signed with New Orleans. Like all of those guys have been very intriguing to them. They just haven't wanted to play in these A-level cost markets for players who oftentimes can be B-minus level players. Like that just has not been the way they've wanted to go about it this offseason. I think that's why it's been fairly boring. I think to Reggie's point, it definitely places a lot of emphasis and there is a lot riding on this draft, as there is every draft, but they are going to have to fill some of these holes via the draft and they need to hit. And it's not just draft, it's whoever they draft is going to need to be developed. Like, I think that's also the conversation that always gets lost when you talk about the draft. Like, it is a two-pronged thing. You got to pick the guys, and then you have to develop them once they enter, regardless of where they are. And they have struggled in both of those areas. So that's kind of how I've thought about it. It in many ways, it just feels like they're trying to maintain flexibility in the present and the future. And yes, if Kyler Murray has a hell of a season and they need to be able to pay him money, they're going to be able to do that with how they have gone about it this offseason, which just it speaks a little bit to the flexibility that they will have moving forward.
Thought exercise here, Reggie. We're seeing the conservative approach to free agency on a limited budget. Now, Kwesi had he was rolling in dough last year, and he absolutely leaned into it. And I think we all praised the assertive approach. Now, we did scratch our heads and say, well, there's a lot of injury red flags here. I don't know about that. But the aggressive nature of last season was welcomed. So if you had a mulligan, if you're Kwesi and you had a mulligan on last year, I think there's an obvious redo. There's the Sam Darnold move, of course. So maybe just put that on the back burner. How else would you redo last year's free agency approach, which now seems like the Vikings are trying to quickly walk back?
Oh my gosh, Sam, I'm so glad you asked. Okay, I'm so ready for this. Okay. All right, so funny enough, I still would have signed Rodgers, Fries, and Kelly. No way to predict Ryan Kelly is going to have those concussion issues. And I know the Will Fries thing wasn't the greatest thing, but I think I understand the vision back then, and so I probably still go there because they did need to make some significant upgrades to the interior of the offensive line. So I get that. I would have re-signed Cam Bynum. I would have brought him back. That would have been like the biggest one for me. And then I know you mentioned quarterback, but I probably would have either thrown more money at Daniel Jones to see if he would have come back, or signed either Russell Wilson or Mac Jones. Russell Wilson, say what you want about him, but he was durable. He was healthy all last season, got replaced by Jackson Dart. So, no harm there. And then Mac Jones was a guy that fans were clamoring for even before the season ended. And so if he's in the building, he's able to, he won some football games for San Francisco last year, stepping up into the role. I think he's a definite upgrade over what they had last year. And so I think that would have been a smart deal. I would not have signed Hargrave or Allen. I might have probably signed Dalvin Tomlinson back. I think that would have been an easy thing, just bring him back into the fold. And I think he gets utilized in a way that is really helpful. I also would have kept Harrison Phillips. I still don't really understand the move there. Like I thought that he was a good piece and definitely a great locker room guy for the team that they just kind of shipped away for nothing. And then I would not have done the Adam Thielen trade. And I probably, considering what we saw, and he was just kind of like a third down specialist, you keep your pick, I would have re-signed Trent Sherfield. Not really of much use anyway. Trent did score a touchdown the season before.
I like Trent Sherfield.
It wasn't the greatest move or whatever, but if you were just gonna go for depth because you couldn't have foreseen what happened to Rondale Moore last year, maybe he would have been somebody who may have just gotten a chance to get a little bit more opportunity at wideout as they waited for Jordan Addison to come back. I probably would have, if we know that he's hurt, which we did see him get hurt in that first preseason game, probably just re-sign Trent Sherfield and keep the depth where it needed to be.
Yeah. Truth be told, and we'll go to Luke next on this. I think I had more issue with the depth moves that Kwesi made last year than the big swings. I liked Will Fries. Everyone liked Will Fries. That was one of the biggest money moves, re-signing Byron Murphy. Of course you needed to do that. Maybe could have done without, one of two, Jonathan Allen or Javon Hargrave, maybe doubling down on kind of past their prime defensive tackles was a little foolhardy. Save that money, re-sign Cam Bynum. That's definitely a possibility. But I didn't love the Okuda move. I didn't love the Justin School move. I didn't love finding your backup quarterback the way you did in the draft, someone who didn't have a great track record and was so young. I didn't like the depth moves. I still have kind of a tough time knocking the aggressive approach they took the first few days of free agency. Like, I think hindsight's very much 2020 in this case.
Yeah, no doubt, Sam. For sure, easy to look back and kind of pick and prod on these. I'm with Reggie. That, like Daniel Jones, looking back, again, that nightmare quarterback carousel we all had to endure, number one with a bullet. And I know there's still, some, maybe not confusion, but just like I guess the topic kind of veers to they let Daniel Jones get out of the build. They didn't pay him enough. Correct me if I'm wrong. And Alec, maybe you have a little bit more insider info on this, but it was pretty much virtually the same exact deal that Indy offered him. He just thought that Indy had a better place to where, he could go compete for a starting job, I think. So maybe the conversations need to be different. Maybe looking back, it's not so much about the money, but promising him more of a starting opportunity with JJ McCarthy, because I think if you would have had Daniel Jones in the building, looking obviously how well he played in Indy, even for a stretch there for about the first 8-9 weeks, almost playing at like an MVP type of level, how different do things look, I guess, last year, if they keep Daniel Jones in the building. Then I'm also with Reg on Cam Bynum, man. Cam Bynum, they experimented with Theo Jackson a little bit last year. I know they signed him to that 3-year deal last offseason. I just think the drop-off, though, from what they had the year prior with Harrison Smith, obviously a year younger Harrison Smith, but a healthy Josh Metellus and a healthy Cam Bynum in that 3-safety look compared to what we got last year. It was such a big drop-off, I think, in not only talent, but just scheme fit-wise with guys like Theo Jackson, and even experimented with guys like Jay Ward towards the end as well. But honestly, if we're playing this game, I think the first thing you redo, you go back to the drafts, right? Sam, you brought up the depth moves. In general, the glue guys, your second and third team guys, usually find in the draft, right? So if we could, I would go back to the drafts. Free agency is supposed to be just kind of the fine tuning, right? The adding those last little cherries on top to the roster, but building your team is obviously supposed to start with the draft first and foremost. So if they had even slightly better than like the 31st ranked drafts in the league over the past 4 years, I don't think we would have been in that position to have to go spend all that money and find, starter after starter after starter. But I think player wise, again, Daniel Jones and Cam Bynum would be my top two. I'm also with Reggie. Like, as fun as it was to go see them go sign two big household names at defensive line, I think we're maybe learning that in this Brian Flores scheme, he asked some specific and certain things from his D linemen, and maybe you just don't need to go get the big household names like maybe we once thought to get similar or maybe close production from that defense as a whole. Maybe you can use that money elsewhere at edge, corner, safety, so on and so forth. So that was a lot of money, and I think those were not one but two big boy contracts that I think that was going to be hard to justify, even if both of them did have the type of production like we thought we were getting. So I think that's where it kind of starts. And then Ryan Kelly, obviously that one's just easy to say in hindsight. Big name, great resume, great pedigree, a veteran leader, captain in Indy for all those years. Wasn't a ton of great options out there at center last free agency, if I remember right as well. But I think center is increasingly becoming such an important position and so valuable with all the, exotic defenses out there and all the things that are asked from your center now. So to kind of risk and gamble all that money on a guy that had, such a long injury history and then not really have a good backup plan in place either. Again, easy to say in hindsight, but that really cost them a lot of efficiency and production offensively when you not only got the quarterback carousel going on week to week, but you also got the center carousel going on as well.
Yeah, we're going to get the Alec Lewis Mulligan after we break, and we're also going to talk Johnny Hekker next. We are brought to you today by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood Prediction Markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I've always known the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involve significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, Alec, let's get your redo on last year's free agency. If you were Kwesi, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the quarterback, as Luke said, for sure. I would say the Darnold one is really easy with hindsight, but we in the moment you didn't have hindsight. Didn't really expect him to win a Super Bowl. The Daniel Jones one, I mean, it becomes difficult if you're committing to him being kind of the starting guy. How does JJ react to that? Then you're kind of managing that part of it. But I'd say if you could ensure that you could keep Daniel Jones, I mean, that would be priority number one. And then the Will Fries one, I can't argue at all in hindsight. He was pretty much the best guard, it perceived to be the best guard on the market. I liked the Javon Hargrave signing at the time. Like I thought if he stays healthy, you could get a guy who could really penetrate. The Jonathan Allen one for me was, I mean, I go back and I remember before that signing talking to I remember having a conversation with somebody internally. We're like, I don't think we would do that one, paying him the amount of money he wants. Then they end up doing it. I mean, that was kind of a red flag at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, those are really, that's probably where I start. I'm trying to think of all the other ones. Cam Bynum. I'll say this, and I was glad Reggie brought up Cam Bynum and Harrison Phillips. Like, I do think last year in the locker room, there wasn't really tension in the locker room. It was more upstairs and the floor above. But I do think like the vibes in the locker room, I think Cam Bynum was a awesome personality to have internally. And I thought the same thing with Harrison Phillips. And so again, it's not to say that like there was internal in locker room tension, because I don't really think there was, but just having those guys, their energy, personalities, was something that at least selfishly I missed. So I like Reggie bringing that up.
Let's turn the page to Johnny Hekker, and Luke Inman, you get to pay off your cold open and talk about some banana punts with Johnny Hekker. He is a 15-year vet at this point, punter, holder, fake punt passer once in a while. And it's Reggie's favorite player in the NFL. You got to love this signing.
Yeah, obviously a widely respected punter in the league for well over a decade, 14 years under his belt. So, yes, entering year 15, got the pedigree, knows what he's doing, kind of a pro's pro and a veteran. Again, you just know exactly what you're getting as far as consistency goes. I know there's a Matt Daniels connection there going back to the Rams. I want to say 2017, 2018. So, and then, as you mentioned, too, I mean, the fun part as well, he's got a plethora of fake punts and throws on his resume. I know he's a quarterback back in high school. So it's just a solid signing, in my opinion, one that can give you kind of some stability and not just punter, but you mentioned it, a guy who knows how to be a placeholder as well, which I think was maybe a under the radar kind of huge hole that Ryan Wright left when he went to the Saints. And I think they just wanted to make sure they brought in a guy that was comfortable and had plenty of reps under his belt in that area as well. So I like it.
He has thrown a pass in 11 of 14 seasons in the league. He's 15 of 26. Reggie, do you remember some epic Johnny Hekker fake punt moments from your time as a St. Louis Rams fan?
Yes, I do. Johnny Hekker, OG, St. Louis Ram. It was him, and he back then he was a placeholder for Greg the Leg, Greg Zuerlein. The Rams had like one of the best special teams units in the NFL. Jeff Fisher identified this guy to Oregon State, and he's undrafted, comes in, becomes like the best punter in the league, 4-time first team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler. You know, I love my St. Louis Rams. I miss my St. Louis Rams. Thinking back to some of the guys that, you know, are still dominating. Johnny Hekker, you know, Greg Zuerlein had a lengthy career in the league. You know, Aaron Donald was a St. Louis Ram. Ty Gurley was a St. Louis Ram. Rob Havenstein was a St. Louis Ram. So, and some of those guys, you know, went on to have success in LA when they moved to LA. But I think Hekker was kind of like a knock it out of the park type of a signing, because Ryan Wright was actually, you know, I think he trended upward as the season went along, because there were some punts where you were just like, whoa, what happened there? And then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, he's just booming it, coffin corner, you know, getting the opposing team in terrible field position. And it paid off for him. But, you know, you want to have someone who knows what they're doing, who's a competent holder for Will the Thrill. And I think you knock it out of the park with Johnny Hekker. As you said, some familiarity with the coaching staff, being with the Rams. You know, Kevin O'Connell was there, Matt Daniels was there. So I think that kind of was a home run of a replacement for Ryan Wright, in my opinion. OG St. Louis Ram, Johnny Hekker.
All right, Reggie's so passionate about this, we're going to stop everything and do an impromptu game of name drop. Reggie is the judge. Alec, here's how you play. Luke, myself, and you are going to go around and around naming St. Louis Rams. If we miss, we're out. You have to go until everybody's eliminated. Ready? I'll start. No. Steven Jackson.
That was going to be my first pick. Are you kidding me? Let's go Isaac Bruce.
Orlando Pace.
Yes, sir. Big O. Am I in it too? Or I'm just the judge.
I feel like it's an unfair advantage, but why don't you name dudes just because you can? Go ahead.
Let's go obscure. Let's go Ronald Bartell. How about that?
That's super. That's a good one in Immaculate
cornerback.
Grid.
Yeah.
Ben Lieber.
Stedman Bailey. Yeah, Ben Lieber was there. Yes, right. That's right. Yep.
How about Oz Azir Hakim? Am I saying that right?
Looks like
Yeah.
you're looking at a
Are you
screen to
reading?
me.
Are you reading?
You guys don't remember?
Yeah.
Greatest show on turf? Are you kidding me? Sam, you know I can't pull up any extra windows on this show. So.
I do know that. I do. You're right. You're right.
Okay.
Marshall
all right.
Faulk.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
obviously.
Mike Jones, Super Bowl winning tackle.
Absolutely.
Torrey Holt.
Absolutely. Yeah, duh. Big
that
game.
was going to be
Big
mine.
game.
I might be out.
There's some Hall of Famers. What are we doing here?
Okay.
I Kurt Warner.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
you go.
Goodness gracious.
You had, was it Aeneas Williams, end of his career?
Yeah.
Yep,
Hall of Famer.
Aeneas.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's a pastor now in St. Louis.
Oh,
Chris
Yeah.
Long.
There you go. There
Top
you
2
go.
draft pick, right? Number 2 overall.
Yep.
we're crushing this game.
That's
I'm
it.
I've got a
out.
good.
I'm out.
I've got a good one. Blake Prohl's father, Ricky Prohl.
That's right.
That's silly.
Sam's definitely
That's right.
on the screen here. Okay, that's fine. Let's go. Greg Robinson, also number 2 overall pick. Big bust.
Yeah.
I think from Auburn. I want to say. Could be wrong.
Who were the other quarterbacks they had?
Mark Bulger.
Did we say? Yeah, let's
Bulger.
go.
Good one. Bulger.
Sam
Trent
Bradford.
Green. Trent Green. Sam
Bradford's pretty good.
Trent Green.
Yeah, they had Sam Bradford. They had Kellen Clemens.
Kellen Clemens.
Tony
They
Banks. Is that a
They-
guy?
Reggie,
back-
they used like 3 first-round picks in a row on defensive linemen, and I know Chris Long was one of them. I'm trying to remember the other 2. LSU, I want to say defensive tackle.
Michael Brockers.
Rockers, thank you. Yep.
Robert
Who
Quinn.
does? He does the
Robert
Rams
Quinn,
squad
UNC.
show. Michael Brockers on the Rams
good
squad
plug.
show.
Good
Was
plug.
Brandon Cooks on the St. Louis Rams?
No, he was LA. He was LA. Think
Oh.
think Tavon Austin.
Yeah,
Tavon
that's
Austin,
Tavon.
West
That
Virginia
I was
with
thinking a little
Geno.
jitterbug receiver.
Yeah, they
guy.
drafted him and Stedman Bailey. They played together at West Virginia.
with Geno. Yeah. Cam Akers.
No
LA,
way. He
bro.
didn't go back that far.
All right,
Did he?
fine.
It's LA.
Feels like it though, doesn't it?
LA.
All right.
Feels like
I
it.
win. All right.
Nice job.
Woo. That was fun. Thank you, Reggie, for opening the door for that.
Absolutely.
When was the last time the Vikings dealt with an offer sheet situation since Nate Burleson? Like, I can't remember the last time the Vikings offered an offer sheet or had someone of theirs offered an offer sheet, but that's the case with Ryan Van Demark, swing lineman from Buffalo. They must be passionate about him. Alec, do you know anything about this this situation? It seems like a peculiar way to go about trying to find your replacement for Justin School, if that's what's happening.
Yeah, I got a text about it. What night? Like Tuesday night, and I'm like, "Is this even real?" Like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here with Ryan Van Demark. But I did that night watch the film of a game he started this past year against the Steelers, and you can see on the film of that game why they would have been interested. The guy is gigantic. He has really long arms, and he can live and keep your run game alive when he is filling in. And now in one-on-one pass protection situations, it gets a little dicey, especially against a guy like Alex Highsmith. But like I was thinking throughout watching the film of the game, like you feel pretty confident with this guy as your tackle when you're trying to run the football behind him. And so and I still think there's maybe developmental upside because he's athletic, he's big. So I think that's, you also, if you're the Vikings, you're looking at it where Buffalo has a lot of depth at tackle. And so the idea that maybe you could get the guy where they don't want to match the offer sheet is a possibility. Now, sometimes these offer sheets can like inspire kind of a, I don't want to say like a rivalry, but it frustrates the opposing team that another team would be willing to take a guy through this path of acquisition. So we'll see if Buffalo matches, but I do think he would be an upgrade from Justin School, and just from a measurables like athleticism standpoint, pretty fascinating dude. And he's still young.
Yeah,
I was surprised. What was the actual contract? I know they have time to match it. 3 days now to match it, but was it 5-6?
Do we know? Yeah, do we know?
Wasn't it like
no? I think
5.1?
I think it's less than that.
Okay.
I don't think I have the official number, but yeah, I wouldn't anything more than probably like $4 million would probably be you're asking too much there.
For some reason, I thought I saw a report of like 5.1 mil. So my first reaction was, just given how much they've penny pinched this offseason, was like, dang, for a backup. I don't care what position it is, for a backup, that felt like a lot of money. But yeah, 3-4 million, something like that. When you think about, the issues they've had with Christian Darrisaw missing so much time the past few years, as good as he is when healthy, you think about all the stress and kind of shuffling that they've had to do on that offensive line, whether it was trading in season for Cam Robinson or rolling with somebody like you just mentioned, Justin Skule, who clearly was not up to par even as a backup. I think it makes a lot of sense why they'd want to kind of prioritize and kind of check this box here at that backup swing spot, and get a higher floor too when it comes to not just talent kind of, week to week, but somebody that I think is an upgrade from Skule from who they had last year, but also I think just help KOC sleep a lot easier at night. Those Saturday nights when Darrisaw is a game time decision. Brian O'Neill getting a little bit longer in the tooth as well. He's missed some time the past 2 years. So you got just more stability there if they can get this deal done, if Buffalo doesn't match it. And I think just a guy you can put a little bit more trust into, that is going to hold up better, according to Alex, specifically in run blocking, which would be a nice addition to have. That they didn't always have, by the way, in 2025. So, if that costs 3-4 mil, I'm all for it.
So I've got the numbers. The tender was 3.5 million for him to stay in Buffalo. The Vikings upped that to 4.3 million for a 1-year deal. 4.3 million. That's not that far off. Yeah, that's not nothing.
And what they paid? Does anybody remember what they paid Justin Skule last year? Just to apples.
I think it was 2 to 3 million, probably in that range.
I'll tell you what, for the problems they had when they had to roll with him in a pinch, I'd gladly spend the extra mil, or 1.5 mil, for a little bit more stability, if that's what it takes.
Yeah, Reg, I would just be mildly concerned about his lack of track record. I was worried. I didn't think Justin Skule had a lot of track record when they signed him, and we're talking 500 snaps and 3 starts last year that Alec watched every snap and gave us the all 22. It's not a tremendous amount to if you're making him your new Justin Skule.
Yeah, I think this is probably like a betting on his upside type of a situation. As we said, monster size. So this is a situation where it's just like, we spend a little bit, and bet on a young guy just, being able to ascend to a level where, we can plug him in there and maybe he has, maybe potential long-term starter range potential.
I think the other thing I would say, Sam, is just like, how many swing tackles in the NFL do you have complete conviction where they step in there and you're like, that dude's going to be a stud? It's just not, there's just a dearth of great offensive linemen in general, specifically tackles. That's why they're all taken in the first round. So that's the other component. Whereas in this draft, and Luke can probably speak to this, like you could probably find a center that you feel like could be an average starter in the 3rd round. You're not going to be able to, with the tackle spot in this draft. So I think that's also why when you're not willing to spend much in free agency and you might be willing to do it on this position, that's probably where it makes more sense.
To that point, just real quick, Sam, I think there's a offensive line epidemic in the league. And we've talked about this before. These high school kids coming out and these 5-star recruits, hey, you're a great lineman. What do you want to play? You want to play defensive line and get, all the flashy, fun 20 sacks and tackles for loss, or you want to go play offensive guard? Like a lot of these talented kids are coming out and they're playing defensive line, and that happens over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and now all of a sudden we're kind of seeing it in the NFL the past couple of years that there's just a lack of just kind of overall in general talent on the offensive line right now.
Let's rattle off some mock drafts when we come back. It's mock draft season, baby. First 3 rounds only. And we're brought to you today by 5 Hour Energy. Speaking of the draft, we've got 18 great 5 Hour Energy shot flavors to choose from. We've got new creations like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, Cotton Candy. Who's going to go first in the 5 Hour Energy draft? Drum roll, the first pick is Blue Raspberry, a sweet and tangy flavor with a taste that nature couldn't make but should have. Bold blue raspberry candy flavor, bright, playful, nostalgic taste, good in the trenches, good in space, smooth, easy drinking texture, reminiscent of a blue slushie from when you were a kid. I'm feeling some blue raspberry today. That's my top pick. There's 17 others available now and more coming soon with 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar. Lots of new flavor innovations coming. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. How is my Kuiper?
Top
Good?
notch. You're in mid-season form right now, Sam.
We'll take it.
Spinman, you do a good Kuiper. This is we're going to display it on screen for those on YouTube, but please read through it for those on audio. First 3-round Vikings mock draft. Luke Spinman, take it away.
Yeah, first of all, I got a safety in the first round from Toledo, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I'm sitting there doing this PFF mock draft this morning, as one does every morning to start their day, right? I find myself, Sam, in kind of a similar pattern here over and over, which is either a corner in round 1 and then a safety in round 2, like A.J. Halsey from LSU, or I flip it around, I go safety in round 1. Obviously, McNeil-Warren here today, Thieneman from Oregon if he's still there, and then a corner in round 2, just because I think just based off kind of the value and depth of those two positions, I feel the best about those two positions walking away with a day 1 starter in those top 50 picks. But, I'm sitting there looking at these two picks, Keith Abney, the second one. We've talked about him on Prospect of a Day, so I won't go too in depth on him. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm looking at the defensive tackles, and it just feels like it kind of falls off pretty quick after those top 2 rounds, those top 50 picks. So pending what they do in free agency, Sam, and I'm interested to see you guys, your guys' mocks as well. If you don't get a D tackle, it feels like in those first 2 picks, it falls off pretty quick. So unless there's a couple sleepers that people are eyeing, which we've talked about Grayson Halton from Oklahoma before, it just feels like they might need to find somebody in free agency. That's all. So anyways, went Jake Slaughter at center. Alec brought this up just a couple minutes ago. There were some great centers on the board. Connor Liu from Auburn, I like. Logan Jones from Iowa. Kind of a sweet spot here with one of these 2 third-round picks. I'm going to be a little surprised if they don't grab a center at some point, but especially in that kind of top 100 picks, I think it's a good center class this year. And then Jonah Coleman, just kind of BPA. I always feel like you can get some good value at running back. Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, we've talked about, kind of had a slow 40 time, not a great combine in Indy. Maybe that pushes him down a little bit, but Jonah Coleman seems to be fighting for that RB2. If I can get him at pick 97, I think that adds a lot of kind of just youth, explosiveness, juice that they're kind of missing from that running back room. But, safety corner, again, Sam, kind of where I find myself going in this PFF mock drafts in those first 2 picks.
Take a good look at Spinny's mock here. Safety, corner, center, halfback. Now I'm going to flip to mine. Safety, corner, center,
Get out of my head, man.
And 2 of the guys are the same. Oh, great. I guess great minds think alike. I've also got Emmanuel McNeil-Warren with pick 18. I didn't swing any deals. I think Alec Lewis might swing one here in a minute, but I'm pretty fired up about D'Angelo Pons. That was Alec Lewis's prospect of the day a while back.
He's phenomenal.
And
I love
I'm endlessly intrigued at number 49. And then my center was not Slaughter, but it was Sam Hecht out of Kansas State, like him. Jonah Coleman's profile is really interesting. Is he literally a bowling ball? Is he like 5'9",
5'8",
230?
223?
Yeah.
He's thick. He's a big
Sturdy.
dude. Low gravity. Yep.
Sturdy individual. So kind of going a little chalky there. Now, not chalky was Alec Lewis's. Do you want to talk about your athletic mock?
I do.
Okay. I
did
to as
one
well.
today. 2.0. I usually do like 3 or 4 because sometimes they make us do them and sometimes I like doing them. But this is my second one, and I got pretty aggressive. And it's a little bold, but I traded up to number 11 from 18 with a pretty light package. Miami wasn't asking for a lot, so I just traded a future third and a future fifth to 11 to select Jeremiah Love, who probably isn't going to get to 11, but you never know with these guys if the public doesn't know some stuff that maybe people internally within these buildings know about some of these prospects and health and all of that stuff. So, yeah, Jeremiah Love at 11. I just think the fit with Kevin O'Connell and how much they love the passing game, having that guy being a part of the passing game would be just tantalizing. At 49, I took Lee Hunter. Is he going to get to 49? I don't know. Defensive tackle, more of a nose type with some explosiveness. And then I think the next two, I think I took Sam Hecht. So I think I did take Sam Hecht, the center, but Luke said it, whether it's Logan Jones, whether it's Slaughter, Trey Zune, like all these guys are seemingly possible in that mix for me. And then I traded down from that 97 spot to get another pick to take a corner and an edge rusher. So, is Jeremiah Love going to get to 11? It seems highly doubtful, but I just that guy and pairing him with what they have, it's just too much for me not to shoot a shot.
The commonality is so far a third round center that we all have. Go ahead, Spinman. What's going on?
Well, of course, I pulled up Tankathon to look at the draft order. So now I'm lagging a little bit. So I don't know. Can you hear me? You got me now?
Yes. The bit of pulling up web pages is just endlessly funny. Go ahead.
2026, man. What are we doing? Anyway, I was just to Alex's point, probably not going to fall to 11. I'm looking at the order. Jets bring back Breece Hall. Arizona, are they in a position as an organization and a roster to do what the Giants did with Barkley and draft a running back that high and not have the surrounding team to kind of elevate him? Probably not. Doesn't mean they won't take him. Outside of that, though, you get into, Washington for sure, an option there. But Kansas City went and got Kenny Walker. The Saints, who a lot of people had, him falling to, went and got the guy from Jacksonville. Was it Travis Etienne, I think? And outside
he likes
of that,
going by HN.
Oh, that's right.
HN.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Still getting used to that. Outside of that, yeah, I could see him slip a little bit. I think he's obviously, I agree, he's a premium blue chip talent. So logically, he shouldn't fall that far. But, just looking at the pecking order, and again, like the Vikings here in this scenario, it just takes one phone call, one team to jump up and leapfrog some people. But I see a way in which, he could get, past that 9, 10, 11 spot. And who knows, after that, you never know. But like the draft a lot. A third and a fifth, especially future third and a fifth to move up a couple spots. I'm all about it. Also, I just want to shout out your corner in the fourth round, Masses from California. Big fan of him as well. Just gets his ball or his hands on the ball quite a bit. So any DB that Mike Zimmer used to say this all the time, any DB that whether it's PBUs or interceptions, I don't care. If you're getting your hands on the ball and making life tough for receivers, you can usually find a spot in the NFL. So Masses from California, like that pick a lot too.
I want to see what Reggie's got.
What do you got for us? Lower minds.
All right. I feel like other than Alec, safety was the deal there. In my simulator, Thieneman went the top 10, and so ended up with Emmanuel as well. So that was there. I had some tough decisions to make in the second and third rounds, man, because Jadarian Price was there. And so that could have been a good ad. I know you probably saw he was on with Kay Adams and she was tossing out Minnesota, and I was like, I don't know.
I watched him last night on film and just because I hadn't. And it's like, and I think he could be an all-around back. I just don't know if he has like elite level burst and if you're spending a second round pick on a running back, And he's I guess if he's like Kyron Williams, you could be okay with it. But anyway, not to interrupt you, but he's an interesting player.
Yeah. I'm good with that. But available at the point there was Kristen Miller from Georgia, and this dude is a huge dude. I know I've been kind of like stomping for them to re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson, but this dude, obviously he's younger. And 6'4", 321, like I think he could be a kid who could really find a niche in Brian Flores's defense. And so that to me felt better than Price, because I kept saying on this show the Vikings need a home run hitter at running back, and I just wasn't sold that Price could be that, even though I do think he's going to be a good back in the league. And then third round, I guess it's funny, like Hecht went in the second round in my simulator, so I ended up going edge. No, D'Angelo Pons was there, so I went D'Angelo Pons because I just feel like it's great value if he's still there in the third round.
Yeah, that would be great value. Insane value.
Luke, have you watched Price?
I've watched Price by default of watching Jeremiah Love. Let's just put it that way. I haven't honed in on him specifically and watched the all-22, but I'm with you. I think, at running back specifically for the Vikings, I think they're missing that kind of home run threat. And as much as I loved Emmett Johnson, I still do like Emmett Johnson, who's kidding who, but after that kind of slower, 40 time, and sometimes, I'm doing it right now, we put a little bit too much stock into these combine numbers, and at the end of the day, just watch the tape. But I'm looking for, or I'm wondering, trying to put myself in their shoes, if they're trying to find a complementary back to Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason in that kind of home run threat, similar to what they hoped, I think, Ty Chandler was going to be actually coming out of UNC when KOC drafted him. So I'm with you. I think Price is a good, solid, high floor type of dude. I think he can be a 3-down guy as well, which is very important because I don't think Aaron Jones is probably going to be around too much longer after this year. But there is some other intriguing options. Probably don't have time to get into it today, but some kind of more home run hitters again that have that kind of home run speed, a la the Dalvin Cook days just a few years ago.
You guys are all the best. Viking Squad Show 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays on Locked On Vikings, Locked On Vikings podcast feed. Find Alex work at The Athletic and check out Luke Inman on the Wolves and soon the Twins postcast. Baseball season, Luke. You excited?
I'm pumped, man. Twins. What are their odds with this World Series? Like 2-1, 3-1? Where are we at? I haven't checked. I can't pull it up.
I think it's right there with the Dodgers. Dodgers, Twins. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I think they're due, right? That's how that works. They're due for one, right?
Just when you least expect it. That's when they win their World Series. Worst to first, 91. Thanks for watching, listening, commenting, subscribing today in the Squad Show, and we will catch you next time.